Shimmer by Matthew Wardell. Kumiko had always been beautiful, naturally beautiful. Her beauty was so incredibly obvious to her that she didn't need the constant compliments and stares to remind her, but she accepted them gladly anyway. And all it took from her to get it was the hint of a smile, a glance over her shoulder, things like that. If it were that simple, why not do it? Why settle for anything less than the best? Beauty had no point if others did not admire her. Some women may have blushed and hid their mouths, or denied and dispelled words of praise, whereas Kumiko gave an effortless, knowing smile. I know, thank you, I know. Today was no exception. Minimal makeup, just a touch of calculated eyeliner, and her jet black hair bundled up under a baseball cap. She wore the monochrome, pseudo-athletic fashion that was so popular this season, though she didn't need to work out. It was the day of her outing to Ueno Zoo. Kumiko wasn't particularly connected with nature or sympathetic towards the plight of slobbering animals that clung so desperately to their ancient natures amidst the expanding metropolis of Tokyo. But things in Ueno were abuzz with a new fervor. There was something there said to be beautiful, truly beautiful, so much so that the word would have to be reserved for said thing, and everything else be demoted to merely pretty or cute. So said one hyperbolic writer for the Japan Times, but it had caught Kumiko's attention. Things hadn't been so excitable in Ueno since the birth of the panda. What was its name? In her toddler years. Back then it was a miracle of nature, or at least that was what was advertised. Prodding two lethargic panda celibates together until they successfully made love was, in reality, another one of mankind's smug victories over nature, preserving that which by every right should have died off long ago, so as to be able to gawk at it. How was it with the dead horse again? Today was not so different. Kumiko's digital tickets had been booked a month in advance, but even so she was forcibly herded through a line to have her arms scanned, and to be handed a ticket stub she'd either throw away immediately or leave on her bedroom dresser for months. The doughy-cheeked attendant would have liked to get to know her more, judging by how he eyed her from top to bottom. Amazing. They let the animals work the gates now? She entered the zoo grounds. Even with the preset limit of entrance, the zoo was packed, and it seemed like every neck, thin or thick, pale or burnt, was turned in the direction of the new exhibit, the main attraction of so-called true beauty. Thinking the crowds may thin out closer to noon, Kumiko headed for the Classic World exhibits. There were smatterings of people, young families led around by screaming, sweating children yanking on their leashes, but even their attention seemed on hold for the new exhibit based on the merchandise they wore. Shimmer. A toddler-age girl, kind of ugly cute, wore a shimmer hat, which had rainbow-colored wings sprouting from the sides. She was straddling the shoulders of her father, who stole a glance down at Kumiko's legs. The man's wife quizzed him on whatever she had just said, and immediately reprimanded him. Kumiko stayed behind a mask of cool disinterest, smooth and unlined. She arrived at the panda exhibit, which drew a decent crowd. Xiangxiang, that's right, its name was Xiangxiang, and it was a she. Up in the wooden loft built into the trees, plopped forward on her stomach, lay the hulking mass of Xiangxiang. She was somewhere in her late 20s, a little younger than Kumiko, yet for a giant panda, these were her twilight years. Xiangxiang was turned away from the glass, so all Kumiko saw was the panda's enormous ass and the little printed paws which stuck out from under it. Kumiko couldn't help but smile at the panda's brazenness. Here was a creature once adored, once considered adorable, who never had a drop of self-consciousness. Xiangxiang had put in her work. She'd squeezed out a baby some years ago and had allowed her damn bloodline to continue. She was a hero among pandas and humans alike. Now she was old, and her days numbered in bamboo stalks. Elsewhere, her cubs were likely eating or napping, just as she was, but doing so in privacy, building up some small sense of anticipation, of rarity, with which they could capture the zoo-goer's attention. Or they would be, were it not for the new creature, Shimmer. Now pandas were old hat. Kumiko had to wonder, was Xiangxiang relieved by her replacement, or did she miss the limelight? Kumiko waited for some time for Xiangxiang to get up. She would have very much liked for the panda to turn around so she could see its small, sad eyes beneath its black mask. All she wanted was that momentary eye contact. What things could Xiangxiang tell her? What jealousy would twinkle in the panda's eye? Or what dullness? Shang Shang shuffled in her sleep, but the panda did not wake or turn around, the big bitch. Kumiko suddenly felt very vain and foolish for trying to read into the giant panda's emotions. It was just a dumb animal. Cute maybe, but dumb. Her ears and cheeks burned a tad, some color blooming on her monochrome mask. She took off her cap and stuffed it in her bag, letting her black hair fall down her back in a long ponytail. An old man with hands held behind his back scanned her gloomily, like Kumiko wanted Shang Shang to do. Or maybe the old man was looking at her like she had looked at the panda, with pity. What did that old fart have to pity? He should be more concerned with not falling and cracking his hip, and with chewing his food thoroughly. Kumiko had told herself long ago that she would never let herself be pitied, not by anyone. She felt perspiration threatening to bead her forehead. Calm down. Let's leave the sweating to the animals. She headed for Ueno Zoo's main attraction, to the expensive terrarium that had been built to house a lone creature. This was what all the fuss was about. A line of people extended far out of the building, the crowd evidently not dying down since the morning. The working masses liked being corralled. Eventually, after what seemed an hour of waiting, Kumiko and a group of 30 or so zoo-goers made it inside and were shuffled into the pre-viewing waiting room that felt like a laboratory cleared for standing space. Shimmer, the zoologist announced to the room, did not belong to any species seen before on Earth. It, for Shimmer was decidedly non-gendered, had no species and no scientific name. It was the product of gene splicing and test tube insemination, and many other things the audience didn't care for or understand. It could have no offspring. It was not likely to be successfully cloned. Shimmer was a happy accident, the first and last of its kind. Viewers were to be searched, pictures were not to be taken. Kumiko was promised beauty she'd never before seen. After a lengthy introduction, the doors to the terrarium's main hall were opened, and the party was led inside by a man dressed in an old Hollywood-esque explorer costume. Inside, the terrarium was moist and decorated with jungle flora. The walkway was an encased tube of glass winding through the jungle. Shimmer was waiting for them within the trees, the explorer told them. The group around Kumiko was practically shaking in their excitement. Literally so, in the case of some children. Kumiko, however, felt incredibly still, like a rock jutting in the middle of a river. She would not be charmed by mere pomp and circumstance. At the explorer's behest, the zoo-goers pressed against one side of the glass tube. Voices frantically demanded, "Where? Where?" and "I can't see it." Kumiko spotted the creature right away. Shimmer was about the size of a golden retriever. Its hands and feet clung to its branch with a three-toed death grip. The power of an eagle, without the unsightly presence of talons. Its body was lean and covered in smooth, snake-like scales. Its face came to a gentle point in one naturally sloping shape, offset by two slight hollows for colorless orbs of eyes. Finely feathered wings pressed along its back, giving it a sleek, modest impression. While pieces of Shimmer could be cut apart and related to the familiar, the whole was mysterious, yet logical. Mankind had compiled nature's greatest hits into this chimera. Gasps were followed by silence that would otherwise have been filled with the shuddering of cameras. Nobody knew what to do with their hands. Shimmer did nothing, and gave no indication to its knowledge of the zoo-goer's presence. Its colorless eyes could have been glinting at Kumiko, but she'd have had no idea. This abomination by teary-eyed geneticists, the arrogance of it all irked Kumiko. She asked the tour guide explorer how long the creature would live again. Shimmer, the explorer said, was expected to live just a decade or less, 8 more years, give or take. The audience gasped again, and cooed like potential inheritors gathered round a hospital bed. "So sad, not long for this world," they said. Shimmer's lifespan was not unlike a dog, Kumiko thought with a smile. This strange, undeniably unique creature was statuesque, so still that Kumiko wasn't sure if it was frightened, playing possum as it were, or just deeply meditative like an ascetic monk. Shimmer was a blank canvas. That was until a beam of light passed over it. Suddenly, within its light gray scales were refracted rays of countless colors. To the observer, Shimmer was shifting in reality, unmoving but changing with every motion from the universe around it. This would-be abomination had somehow miraculously become a brilliant gem. Kumiko wanted nothing more than to smash that gem, to stand over the shards of it in 8 years' time when Shimmer had died and she could revel in her victory. Shimmer would lay withered and Shang Shang would be a long-gone memory, but how long would Kumiko's beauty last? The tour guide explorer called for the lights to be dimmed further. Darkness settled inside the terrarium. For a moment, Shimmer was gone. Everything was gone, but Shimmer was the only presence that was missed, the only thing that remained in mind. Then, its colors came alive. Gasps and applause. Bioluminescent light thrummed from within the creature, spreading through a web of veins and projecting out through the scales. Shades of persimmon and emerald and cloudless skies and every brilliant color glowed out over the jungle, bathing the onlookers, who let out another wholly genuine gasp that now fell on deaf ears. It was beautiful, but the wings extended out. There could be no denying it. This creature, it was fantastic. More beautiful than nature could have ever allowed. Shimmer was shining, shining brighter than a flower blooming, a comet burning, a star imploding. Kumiko saw the universe in the creature's eyes now come alive. She saw herself, saw her own reaction to Shimmer in the orb of its eye, and for the first time, Kumiko was not beautiful. Shimmer spread its wings and flew. Once the group's allotted 15 minutes were up, the lights came on. Several zoogoers dabbed teary eyes with packaged tissues handed out upon exiting the exhibit. Did the crying begin during or after the show? Child and elder alike were urged along the walkway and outside of the terrarium. Some walked backwards, trying to steal final glances inside, where Shimmer had refolded its wings and settled back onto a branch. Kumiko reached into her bag and retrieved her cap, hastily putting it on and stuffing her hair back up into it. Her eyes were sullen and watery behind the smile cemented on her face. She promptly made her way through the terrarium gift shop and headed for the zoo's exit.